I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. Okay, so today on Pro Mindset, I'd like to welcome a dear friend and former partner, Drew Pittman. Drew, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Craig. I really appreciate it, man. It's an honor to be on with you.
Okay, so Drew, we've got a lot of history. We've been in the trenches together over the years. Why don't you share with our audience what your perspective is after doing this for almost 30 years, what it's like to be an NFL agent?
Well, that's a question that we could probably talk for hours and hours about, but I think the number one thing is there is a misperception about what an agent is and what an agent does. Everybody sees the stuff on TV and they read about the agent who gets his client hundreds of millions of dollars. And that does happen. And there is a whole lot of stuff about this business and this industry that is really cool. It's just not the things that people think it is. You're right. You and I have a lot of history, and we've spent a lot of years together and a lot of time together, starting out kind of together. You were a little bit ahead of me and helped me out a lot. But just, we kind of learned as we went along, and we probably thought it was something that as we really got into it, we realized that it wasn't really that. The number one thing for me is that, and I feel like you probably very much the same, having the ability to make a positive impact on young men who are pursuing their goals and their dreams, and we're in a position to really have a lot of impact on that. I think a lot of agents, they maybe either don't realize it or they don't care that the impact that they have can be different than what, most people think it is. I think a lot of agents feel like they got to go get them money. They got to lie, cheat, steal, and whatever that was Jerry Maguire said in the movie. And it's more about helping young men grow and develop as football players, as employees of a football team, as teammates, as husbands, as fathers, as men coming out of football and then having a whole lot of life left. I always felt like you did an excellent job of getting your guys prepared for every phase of what they went through, from being a college junior or senior to being a 30 to 35-year-old man with a family and a future, and sometimes not knowing exactly what they wanted to do with that future. And so to me, that's the essence of what you can really do as an agent.
Absolutely. Drew, when you look at college athletes, college football players that have had the dream since they were knee-high to play in the NFL, and they're being recruited by zillions of agents from all over the country, and you get an opportunity to sit down with that young man, perhaps with his significant other or his parents or a circle of influence, but what kind of impact can you make in one meeting that may be the only meeting and the only time you ever talk to this young man?
There probably isn't one answer to that. And I think the thing that we always tried to do was to read the player, to find out what was important to them. And sometimes you can find that out. Sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes you think you know it and come to find out after he signs with somebody that's completely opposite of you that you didn't really know what it was. And other times you don't really know, and they don't really let on or give you any clues as to what those things are. For me, I always just try and be authentic. I'm not trying to be something I'm not. I'm trying to be who I am and be able to get across the fact that I have experience, I have knowledge, I have some some wisdom, especially now that I'm an older guy in the business. I care about the player. I care about their career. I care about their family. I care about their post-football career. I have the understanding of what things can happen during their career that can either derail them or that they can use as a stepping stone to prove their value and their worth to a team. But also the fact that I'm just going to shoot you straight. Something I tell players all the time is that, you know, I'm not here trying to keep you as my client. I'm here to try and help you be the best you can be and accomplish all of your goals and dreams. You know, when you find the good fit, it's the guy that hears that and says, you know what, that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that we know now that maybe we didn't know when we first started was how difficult it is for a young man to navigate through his NFL career. Has any player or has any agent ever had a player that's had this perfect career?
I don't know of them.
Obviously not. I mean, even Peyton Manning had to deal with neck surgery and switch teams, and Tom Brady had a lot of issues over the years in New England. You could take any player in the league has had challenges and obstacles, whether it's testing positive for a PED, an injury, something off the field, numerous changes in coaches and front offices, changes in scheme, competition from the draft. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I think the biggest thing that we can do when we sit down with the young man and his family is help them understand the environment they're getting into, help them understand that there's things that they think they already have it figured out. Most players think they already have it figured out. Even if they're not cocky, they still think they've got it all figured out.
As I have helped you outline what they are and identify those things, and I'll give you a hug if you need a hug, and I'll give you a kick in the pants if you need a kick in the pants. And most players need both throughout their career. And so the things that
they don't have it figured out. We don't have it figured out, but we've developed systems, and using high character, good morals, we can help players overcome any obstacle. Some guys don't want to hear that, but that's something that I try to do when I meet with young men.
No question.
So the business has changed. Every business changes. What do you see as the most remarkable changes in the athlete representation business as it pertains to the mindset of the players?
Well, let's take that up until this past March, because what's been going on in our world has obviously created the most changes, and it's wreaking the most havoc upon everybody's life. But as football teams or NFL and college, everybody's trying to figure out how to get through all this. But leading up to that, I think the biggest change is that really I think the more people who got in the agent business really affected the mindset of the players in a negative way. And the reason being is that I don't know how many agents there were in 1998 when we were just kind of maybe reaching that point of experience in the industry where we really kind of knew what was happening. All these other agents got in it, and so of course they're offering more to players and to lesser deserving players because they're just trying to get their foot in the door. They're just trying to be able to negotiate an NFL contract, even if it's for an undrafted free agent. Yeah, I always joke that you and I maybe kind of started the ball rolling on this quote unquote combine training when we had those probably 10, 12 guys that we had signed come to Dallas and work for 2 weeks before combine and pro day, and it just snowballed from there. And so we used to call it combine training, and now you talk to players who aren't invited to the combine, who are guys that may have a chance to go to camp and may have a chance to make an impression, but they're wanting to be treated like third, fourth round draft picks. The third and fourth round draft picks are wanting to be treated like first rounders, and the first rounders are wanting to be treated like Hall of Famers. The mindset of the player has been molded by agents. It's probably been molded by colleges, because they're sophomores in high school, and they got Nick Saban coming to their high school to meet him. And so what 16-year-old kid doesn't feel like the stud of the world if Nick Saban comes to his high school? You got Alabama, you got Clemson, you got Oklahoma, you got Texas, you got, all these great schools, big name schools calling on you when you're a young kid. And so all of these things change the mindset of a player to where they think they're better than they are, because these people who are trying to get them to go to school there or represent them have to make them feel like that in order to get them to go with them and to buy into their program. So I think all those things have really played into the change in the mindset.
I would say that what you're talking about is entitlement, and entitlement happens when a couple things are present. One is that you have access to a lot of information and you think you're like them. You think you might be better than them. And the second ingredient is everybody that goes to college football today on scholarship expects to go to the NFL. It didn't used to be that way. Now everybody's going pro. And so because everybody thinks they're going to, the coaches in turn have to communicate in such a way that, hey, if you come here, you're going to go to the league. If you come here, we're going to run a system that's going to get you ready for the league. That's what college coaches have to do to recruit. So when that happens, we've got the momentum going of, hey, everybody thinks they're better than they are. And if you're an agent and you're recruiting them to help them go to the pros and you come in and go, oh, you're going to have a tough road to go, they're not going to sign with you.
Right.
They want to sign with somebody that feels good, somebody that talks like the college coaches did when they were recruiting them. Hey, you're going to come in, you're going to play right away. You're better than the guys we got. We got to get better. We need you. You could be a 3-and-out guy. That sets the stage for the recruiting narrative for agents a few years later.
Exactly.
How do you break that cycle? And how the thing that just blows my mind is every single year there's around 100 to 120 guys that think they're going to go in the first round. And the first round always has 32 unless somebody loses a pick. There's never more than 32, but yet there's 4 times that number that think they're going to go or led to believe they're going to go in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. And along with that, and I didn't use the entitlement word because, you're exactly right. It is entitlement, but I also think that, that term got thrown around a lot and kind of pinned on everybody in a certain age group, and certainly not everybody in that age group is like that. I think the way you break it, let me back up. I don't know that you can break it, but I think you can find the guys that are your kind of guys. And maybe there are definitely fewer of them. You and I both know this. We've been, 28 and 30 years, respectively, in the industry. And so we know that there's the guys that are a fit for us are fewer and farther between. But when you find those guys, man, they get it. And they're hungry for authenticity, and they're hungry for reality. Sure, they want the stuff, and they want to be treated, the best that they can. They want to. I think there's a number of people, and especially in our industry, young men who are hungry for the truth. It's just harder to find the right guys. I personally don't want to work with somebody that only wants to hear what he wants to hear. I want to work with guys that say, shoot me straight. And so when I'm talking to players now, I'm asking them the question, what do you want a cheerleader or you want a leader? And if you want a cheerleader, I'm not your guy. Nobody says I want a cheerleader, but you can tell how their demeanor changes when it's like, oh, wait a minute, you're not going to tell me how great I am. And back to your question, I don't know that you can change it, but I think when you find a guy that is hungry to get to where he wants to go, is willing to put in the work to get there, and believes in our ability as leaders, agents, mentors, whatever you want to call it, we're all the above, and believes in our ability to help them get there, then that can be the factor that gets them over themselves. In most years, not this year, but they show up at the off-season program and they go, holy cow, everybody is like the best guy I ever played against in college. Everybody is that good. And then it starts to dawn on them. And so I think one of the things that we did really well and that we both are continuing to try and do is to prepare our guys for the reality of the NFL and say, hey, you can accomplish your goals and dreams, but these are the things that you have to do if you're going to do it. And then they get there and they see it, and that helps build that trust that they had already started to give us. And then they get there and they see it, and it's more trust, and then it allows us to sow more into their life, more truth, instead of more fluff and, blowing smoke at them.
Well, I think one of the things that is a little bit of a entitlement buster is their friends. If they go to a small school, they may not have a lot of friends that have gone through the NFL evaluation process. But if they go to a bigger school, they've all seen the disappointment of their former teammates that were told by their agent they're going to go in the first round and maybe didn't even get drafted at all. And this year there were a lot of guys that, thought they were going to get drafted that didn't even get signed at all.
Right.
So those are the types of things. I think disappointments and failures from people that you know and you respect and you played with, that starts to creep in on guys that have excellent self-awareness, excellent, almost like situational awareness, understanding that there's more players that want to be drafted than the teams are going to draft.
Right.
And the fact that getting drafted, and they've had teammates and friends that have gotten drafted that didn't make it.
Yeah. There certainly is that. A lot of those guys, they start making excuses basically for themselves that, oh, well, he didn't do this or he didn't have that or, his mind wasn't right or he was thinking about his girl too much or whatever the case is. And they, I think so many of them, though, say, yeah, I'm not that guy.
Well, Drew, being an agent for those people out there that are listening is more than just working with the players. Equally important, it's the relationship that we develop with the teams. Why don't you share with the audience how you develop relationships and why it's important to have relationships with NFL team front office guys?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is something that I think the outside world. I know, talking to some of my friends as I was growing up in the business, and just talking to people now that you meet, and they go, "Oh, you're an NFL agent," and they think it's so much different than it is. But that is, to me, as important as anything. And my father was a banker; he owned some banks, and he really taught me the importance of relationship and, relationship in business. And, you can call it networking because there is a lot of networking that goes on, but it's really more about having relationships with people where there's trust. And so you and I have been at many, many all-star games or at the combine, and you see guys talking to team people and they're selling them on their guy. And what we always try to do and what we still try and do is just find out how we can help the guy at the team. Because after you develop a relationship, they want to help you too, and it's mutual. But until then, it's how can I help you? The other thing is I was very, because of what my dad had told me, I was very intentional about meeting people with the teams and letting them understand that my motive was, which is to help young men accomplish their goals and dreams, help them be the best that they can be. We developed, when we were partners, we developed a motto, pursue excellence, and it's something that's still very important in everything that I do. When you communicate those things with team people, and then you are very honest with the team people, then they understand that there's some trust and that maybe you're different. And so I feel like, I know you do too. We've got a phone, full of contacts with GMs, with, of course, a bunch of the GMs are guys that when we were coming along, they were area scouts, and, some of them have become GMs, and you can't go and talk to a scout or a director of college scouting or a director of player personnel or a GM or an owner. you can't go talk to them and tell them things about your player that aren't true. You can't tell them things that, they can do that they can't. You can't tell them things that they didn't do that they did. You have to be authentic and honest. And so that's been, for me, the thing that I've always lived my life on and operated my business under, is just honesty, authenticity, Christ-like principles is what, we years ago, we made the decision that, that's how we were going to do it. And, God would either honor it, or we'd go find something else to do. And he honored it. And so, I tell players, we're the conduit between the player and the team. We're the ability to get in real information from teams and share it with our players, whether it's in the draft process or whether it's in the process while they're trying to establish themselves on their team, or whether it's in the free agency process when they reach free agency and then go test the market. It's being able to get good information and then give good information back to the team so that there's trust and respect. And that always helps the player.
No question. And there's times that you don't tell them things they don't need to know as well. You're not lying. You're just not telling them stuff they don't need to know, because your duty as an agent is to protect the best interests of your client.
Sure. And the thing is, in this business, there's an emphasis on the teams to do their job. We don't have to do their job for them. If a guy's got an injury, he's getting over it. It's leading up to the draft, and maybe he's not quite there. If a team's asking us about the player and they don't ask about where he's at in the recovery process, we're not gonna go, oh, hey, by the way, he's not quite there yet. That's his job to do his homework. If he asks us where we are, we're going to be honest with him. We're going to tell him, hey, he's not there yet, but he's getting there, and the doctor says this, and we provide him the information, and we take away the unknown. I won't mention the name, but I remember there was an offensive lineman at a Big Ten school that you were representing, and as you were doing your work for the player, you kept hearing something about this guy, that he was like, a troublemaker, and he was always getting in trouble on the team, and he's always, fighting his own teammates. And really, you did a masterful job of getting the real information from your client, also talking to his college coaches, and you turn that from he's a bad guy to, hey, he's a guy that plays with passion. He's a guy that loves the game of football. He's a guy that loves to win. And he's a guy that every one of his teammates wants him behind him when they're going to battle on Saturdays. And the NFL teams loved it. I think he ended up getting drafted in like the third round. But that's the kind of stuff that we have to do. But if we don't know what's being said, then we don't know how to help our players the best. And again, part of having great relationships, whether it's with the colleges or with the, your own client or with the NFL teams, and when we tell teams something, they believe it. That's what our job is.
No doubt. Okay, so I want to dive into the negotiations. And of course, the negotiations change from player to player situation. But let's talk about the big time negotiations where you've got the dude and you're dealing with multiple teams. What is kind of your approach to maximize your client's money and also give him an opportunity to pick the team that's the best fit for him? Because sometimes there's non-monetary factors that are just as important as money.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think it's one that's lost on a lot of people in our business because they're just trying to get the big deal. And the other thing that you didn't mention is the actual structure of the deal, because people see, so and so signed a $200 million deal, but you and I know that it's really a $50 million deal, because after year 3, some things in the structure kick in that are going to make it impossible for the team to keep it. They're almost like things that were thrown in to make the agent look good or make the player look like he's got the best deal ever, and they'll never get to it. So structure, those are things that I start talking to my clients a couple of years before they hit free agency, about the actual process. Now, we start talking from day one about how to get there. And we start planning the course. And it is different with every player. Some guys come in and, they're going to be a starter right away and they're plugged in. It's a great system. And, other guys, it's like, okay, here's how you establish your role. Here's the vision that the team has for you. And so this is how you have to help them make that vision come true. And so it's different. But we talk about all the different factors. Some are non-monetary. How much is guaranteed? How much you getting up front? If you got 3 years at a low amount and then 3 years at a high amount, it may not end up being as good a deal as you think it is. When you're talking about negotiations, it's finding the leverage. Part of finding the leverage is making sure you got other teams that have interest.
Well, Jadeveon Clowney right now is in that situation where when he went to free agency, I'm sure he thought he was going to get top dollar, and he's still in the streets, and teams have started their camp.
Very true, and we know that unless you're in the middle of a situation, you don't really know what's happening. But we've seen it enough to know what it looks like. And in his case, it certainly looked like that.
No question. I had a couple thoughts in follow-up to your response. One is that when you have a connection with character with teams, it increases our credibility with the teams. And by having that increased credibility with front office guys, it helps us with one of the two parts in information gathering for a negotiation. There's two parts. You have to gather information about the market. That's finding out what the current team and all the other teams think of your guy, how they value him, does he fit their scheme, what kind of dollar value, do they put on him, all those types of things. If you don't have credibility, they won't tell you the truth either. We need the team to be honest with us, and they're not going to be honest with us if they don't trust us. And then the second part of that information gathering is to get inside information from your own client. Because if you don't ask the right questions, if you don't know what's important to him, if you don't know what his decision criteria is, if you don't know where his heart's at, if you don't know where his pain is with his current team, and whether that's a pain that can be reconciled or it's a pain that's going to drive him to go somewhere else, and it's in his best interest to go somewhere else.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So at the end of the day, when we're negotiating, it's not just about numbers and structure and comp and how much is going to be in the signing bonus, how much is going to be paid in the first few years. Do they have rolling guarantees? All this stuff. That's obviously very critical, but preceding those discussions is really understanding your client and understanding the market.
Yeah.
Okay, Drew. Go ahead if you want to say something.
No, yeah, I was just going to say kind of along those lines, sometimes we can bring up things to our players that they hadn't even thought about.
Well, I think players initially think it's all about money. Most people think it's all about money. But when the rubber hits the road and you've got to move and you've got to drive to work and your kids got to go to school in that city and you've got to live with that economic environment, that social setting, whatever you want to call it, it may not be worth the money, the additional money you're getting from that team.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, Drew, so I'm going to switch up on you. As a consultant for parents that are advising their sons about how to best navigate through this NFL process, not just in picking an agent, not just in where to train, not just in, how to maximize your success as an NFL player, not just to maximize your money, but the total package. What kind of advice do you give parents so that they can use this as a background or a filter or a guide in consulting with their own son on how to make decisions as it pertains to their NFL career?
Well, if I'm an agent and I'm coaching the parents, I'm saying, sign with me. But, really, the parents sometimes, and this, sometimes the parents are getting in the way of the kid making the best decision. Sometimes the parents are trying to help their son make a better decision, and it's the other way around. But if I'm coaching the parents, I'm just saying, look, no matter what your son is going through in life, I would hope that you want somebody giving him advice that has knowledge, experience, respect, character, and that will put put their interests first over their own. So, one of the things, that I've always done is said, look, I'm always there for you. I'm 24/7. That's what the job entails. But I also want it to be a mutual respect for each other. And it's like, this is a different type relationship. It's a partnership. And so in any good partnership, it has to be good for both partners. We have to do what we're good at. If you come to me and go, hey, I feel like, what I'm doing is way more important than you. And instead of 50-50, I want 75% and you get 25%. Well, that's two people who aren't good partners because they're thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about each other. They're not thinking about the greater good. And so that's what it's like in a agent-player relationship. The player has to be good at what he does, and he has to do it to the best of his ability. And he has to care about the agent. The agent has to be good at what he does. He has to do it to the best of his ability, and he has to care more about the player than he cares about himself. And so when you can find a player, when I can find a player who feels that way, then that's the perfect fit. And both, and I felt like, we were partners for 22 years and I felt like you always did that. And I always tried to do the same. And we didn't always agree on things, but we're in an industry where probably the average partnership lasts 3 to 5 years, and we were partners for 22 years. That's one of the things that I'm looking for is who can see this as the partnership that it is, so that the player does better, then the agent does better, and everybody does better.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite things to think about. We both had a lot of guys that were either drafted late or didn't get picked at all that have had incredible careers. Guys that, so to speak, outkicked their coverage, played for 10 plus years. What do you see as the secret sauce for them? What do you see as the it factor for them? What, in my pro mindset, it's belief, passion, motivation, hard work, lifestyle, winning habits, and perform on demand. It might be one of those or maybe something else. What do you see as the deciding factor?
I think all those things that you mentioned are really important. When you started this podcast about the pro mindset, it was really interesting to me because I have been thinking about really how important the mindset is. And you've broken it down into a bunch of different factors, but so much of it is really, if you have, there's a lot of players with a lot of ability that never make it because they don't have the mindset. And it's not just like confidence, it's confidence. The Bible calls it humility, but it's, meekness. It's confidence with humility. It's work ethic, it's belief, and it's, so often it's more about, there's a lot of those guys have the I'm going to prove everybody wrong mentality. A lot of people have the I'm going to prove everybody wrong mentality, and they just can't. But, part of it too is being in the right position, with the right team, for example. Sometimes you're recruiting a guy and you're talking about what you go through and finding those guys. So often, we call it a lot of times, like especially in coaching, it's the it factor. You find guy, you talk to them, and one of the things is we've been doing this so long that we can talk to guys and go, they have the it factor. I've walked out of meetings, I really like that guy. I sure hope he makes it. Whether he signs with me or not, I sure hope he makes it. Then I've walked out of meetings and I've said, I really like that guy. That dude's going to make it. That guy will play. I don't know that there's any one thing, but I really, if they don't have the right mindset, so often the right mindset is the ability to overcome failure, the ability to overcome a lot of people telling you you're not the guy. You think back, you're talking about, Reggie Swinton, he got cut from the NFL. He got cut from the XFL, the first XFL. He got cut from the Arena League. He got cut from NFL Europe. He got cut from Arena 2, all that. He was from Arkansas. He wanted to play at the University of Arkansas so bad, and they didn't want him. So he went to Murray State. He got rejected so many times. But when I met Reggie and I just was like, he has an it factor. And of course, as you know, I get him an opportunity. The Cowboys were looking for a guy just for one preseason game because it was the last preseason game. They just needed a guy for one preseason game to return punts and kicks because they had guys hurt or they had guys they didn't want to risk getting injured. He returns a punt for a touchdown and a kickoff for a touchdown in that game, and he plays 8 years in the league. So it's just sometimes it's the guy that can overcome rejection, failure, not getting what he wants, but has the ability to not get down on himself. You find the guy that has the it factor, the guy that can overcome, the guy that has the work ethic and, passion. Passion overcomes so much more. And, the old saying is, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yep, no doubt. Well, going back to Reggie did a couple things. One is he had a make it identity from the moment he walked into Cowboys locker room. And then he had, during the opportunity of a lifetime, which was one preseason game, that was the opportunity of a lifetime for him. He capitalized on it during the lifetime of the opportunity, which was one game. And I think so many people don't capitalize on it. The window closes. Can you make it happen when the window's open? And here's what's funny. When Reggie went to the Cowboys, there were a lot of dudes, probably 35 to 40 of them, that went to training camp. They were in training camp every single day. They got an opportunity to play in 4 preseason games and didn't make it.
Yep.
He got one. So I think it's really critical.
Yeah, and a funny story, along with Reggie is that, after he played in Dallas, he played in Detroit, and he got released by the Lions after a couple of years, and I get a call from the Dolphins. The Dolphins wanted to sign him because they needed, a third receiver, fourth receiver, return guy. The same week, you know how it is. Everybody waits till, Monday night or Tuesday morning and says, hey, we want to bring your guy in. And the Lions called as well. And so I'm talking to Reggie, and he's like, yeah, I think the Lions is the best chance for me. And so instead, the Dolphins signed this guy named Wes Welker. And everybody knows what happened to his career. So, who knows? If Reggie goes to the Dolphins, probably Wes gets picked up by somebody else anyway, but maybe not. It's being, like I think you alluded to, it's being ready to take advantage of the opportunity and staying ready to take advantage of the opportunity. Because especially in the NFL, you never know when it's coming.
That's the biggest emphasis I've had with my young players during this COVID thing, not getting an opportunity to go to OTAs, not having a normal off season, not having 4 preseason games, and having the NFLPA, unfortunately, encourage the league to go to 80 instead of 90 on roster size, is you got to just always be ready.
Yep.
You don't have time to get ready.
Well, we told guys this all the time, is that you can't count your reps. You got to make your reps count. And you can have, if you're getting 2 reps in team, don't be whining about the 2 reps. Oh, I'm only getting 2 reps. And that guy that, he's got drafted. You see, he got drafted. He's not better than me, but, he's getting 10 reps. And then when you go in, your mindset isn't right to take advantage of what you do have. So, yeah, it's huge. Some guys come in with it, and some guys learn it, and some guys never get it.
So true. Okay, Drew, the author. Drew, you authored a book, First Team Dad, a handful of years ago. Why don't you share with our audience the crux of the book, where they can find it?
Yeah, so First Team Dad, Your Playbook for a Winning Family, was born out of a desire to be a great dad and a great husband. Most guys, when they become husbands, they want to be, they want to be great husbands. They want to be, and they have kids, they want to be great dads. But the biggest thing is most of us never really got taught how to do it. And that doesn't mean that everybody had a bad dad. I had an awesome dad, but it's just knowing the things that we can do. And so prayerfully, I considered, what are the things that I can do? I don't want to be good. I want to be great. And I came up with 30 principles that you learn from sports. And I took stories from my experiences as an agent and from my experiences in athletics. and took those principles, told a story about how it happened to me, and then how you can apply it to being a better husband or a better dad. Tony Dungy wrote the foreword for me. Coach Dungy's a good friend and awesome leader and awesome man. And guys like me, I wrote it for guys like me that don't have time to sit down and read for an hour every day. And so each chapter is 3 to 5 pages. And then one of my pet peeves with a lot of the good books that I've written is I read the book and I go, man, that's great information, but I have no idea how to apply that in my life. And so I put at the end of each chapter what I call the game plan, and it's 4 or 5 bullet points on things that you actually can do to implement the principle into your life. My reason for writing, and you know my boys, so Jake and Eli, a lot of times when I was, as they were growing up, I'd blow up at them or something. They go, "Oh, first team dad, huh?" And my comment was, I didn't write the book because I was one. I wrote the book because I wanted to be one.
That's awesome. Drew, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate your friendship. I want to wish you nothing but the best in your agent business and your other ventures. I most importantly want to wish you the best with your family.
Well, Craig, I really appreciate it, and our friendship means a lot to me. You've been one of my best friends for a long, long time, and thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for taking the initiative to create this podcast and to help people understand how they can change their life by changing their mindset.
Amen, brother. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.